So welcome to another episode of Menable Matters with me, Steve Whitten. Now, I've got a fabulous guest this time, and this podcast is one of our special celebrations of the 2022 Pride Month. So it gives me absolute pleasure to introduce somebody who I connected with on LinkedIn fairly recently, who's a hypnotherapist, a psychotherapist. And if you're watching this on video, you'll see that he has a very nice rainbow background behind him as well, because he's also a flag waver for the LGBT community. So, Martin Furber, welcome to Menable Matters. How are you, sir?
Thank you, Stephen. I'm absolutely fantastic. It's great of you to have me on. Thank you.
No, you're more than welcome. It's brilliant to connect with you. And I can't remember how we connected, actually. It was on LinkedIn, wasn't it? And
it was, yeah. I was
somehow.
It was. I was looking at the work you do with Menable, and it caught my eye. And I thought, oh, this guy sounds interesting. Let's connect. I like that, the whole ethos of what Menable's about.
Wow. Well, that's brilliant. Well, look, I'll tell you what, in good old fashioned Menable Matters fashion then, that's two fashions in one sentence, but you know what I mean. Give us a little bit of a rundown and a background of who you are, where you're from and what you do. And as I always jokingly say, if you can make that last about 30 minutes, that'd be brilliant.
Okay. Well, as you've already said, my name is Martin Furber. I'm based in Preston in Lancashire, and for the last few years I've been a solution-focused hypnotherapist and psychotherapist, and I tend to specialize in dealing with self-acceptance, because sort of a lot of our mental health issues are caused by repeated negative thought patterns. Negative thought patterns create anxiety, and a lot of people from any marginalized or discriminated community that present with mental health issues all seem to have a common denominator, and that is it relates to early years bullying, marginalization, discrimination, where during times of stress, even with people who are sort of getting on with their lives quite happily, during times of stress, undue things, whether that be redundancy or even planning for some kind of meeting or something like that, the voice of bullies from early years can become the inner narrative. Yeah. When we're stressed out, we can suddenly remember all the names we were called, the situations we were in, that kind of thing. And solution-focused hypnotherapy really is helpful at getting rid of that, detaching the emotions from the memory.
We can never get very good at this, because you, even in that first few minutes there, you've started me thinking about those teachers that I didn't get on with, those comments that my mum or dad made, and all things that my friends and family will have said along the way. And but you mentioned there about the self-acceptance being the, and you and I have talked, pre-recording, and we're going to come onto this in quite a big way. That, that for me was my major issue, was self-acceptance. So, where does that come from, Martin? In your experience, the people you speak to, where does that, we're not born not accepting ourselves, are we?
No, not at all. And that's the conditioning, I think, because we thrive better as a tribe than as individuals. That's the way we're programmed as humans. You can go back to the early days of caveman and woman, and other genders were available. And when we did anything that helped with the sort of process of bettering ourselves, of furthering ourselves, of helping the tribe, whether that was hunting and gathering or reproducing or whatever, we felt good. We felt motivated. So, we are all programmed to function as a tribe, whether that be as a family unit or as friends or whatever, or in a sales team, for example. We all want to be part of that tribe. That's why social exclusion works well as a punishment. That's why social exclusion, being sent to Coventry, let's go back to the days of the unions, it worked as a punishment. Ostracization is a terrible thing. And self-acceptance is wanting to be accepted by everybody, to be part of everything, to be part of that team, to be part of society, to be accepted and to be liked. It's inbuilt into us.
So you see a lot of clients then, and that come to you, and the crux of the issue is self-acceptance. Would you say at some point that's been triggered?
Yeah, it could have been triggered, as I say, early years memories of marginalization, of bullying, of being picked on, can suddenly come to the forefront of the mind again in times of stress. And unfortunately, anything we concentrate on, we amplify.
Right.
That's why I like the solution-focused approach, because we try and detach memories from past events, try and detach the emotions from the memories of past events, and then concentrate on looking forward, concentrate on where you are now and where you want to be, not where you've been. Nobody comes to therapy to actually change their past. They come to therapy to be able to deal with the past. You may come to therapy to change your future, to organize your future better, to plan it better, and to have a happier future.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think when we spoke, we had a lengthy conversation on the phone a week or so ago, didn't we?
We did.
You know, I think that's what you said then, was that therapy is not about changing your past. It's about accepting your past and you know, projecting you forward into a better future.
Absolutely. And removing the emotions from those bad memories. I mean, if I were to ask you to cast your mind back now to when you were a little nipper running around, and maybe the first memory you have of, say, falling over and grazing your knee. At the time, that would have been, it would have been the end of the world. The tears would have been flowing. You know, somebody would have put a plaster on it for you, and problem solved, sort of thing. But at that time, it would be very emotional. Within a few days, you would have not forgotten about the incident, but there wouldn't be any emotion attached to it anymore. And that's probably a good analogy of explaining how we do it in therapy, to detach the emotion from the memories.
Well, do you know what it is? I mean, this subject fascinates me, as you know, and I'm not at your level by any means, but I'm a bit of an armchair psychologist. And, you know, I like to sort of delve deep and look into things and find out what's going on. And, you know, the minute you mentioned that there, one of my memories was that I remember being bought a bike for my 6th birthday, I think it was, and my mum was heavily pregnant at the time, and she took me around the streets, and it was on stabilizers, and I think one of the stabilizers went off the edge of the curb, and off I went into the road, and, you know, landed on my side, kind of thing. And back then it was okay to sort of meter out a fair amount of sort of physical discipline to your children. And so she did, and I was crying my eyes out whilst getting sort of smacked and kicked for falling over and not getting up, and you know, and to this day I still can't ride a bike.
Really?
Yeah, I've never ever learned to ride a bike. I mean, now I'm at my age, I can't be bothered, but but I've never ever learned to ride a bike, and that's, you know, how daft is that?
Oh, there you go. If you want to, I can help with that.
Oh dear, I wondered how long that would take. I led you into that, Martin, didn't I? But no, that's a good example of, I suppose, of you know, just how these you know, that I wouldn't say minor trauma, because I suppose, as you rightly say, at the time it was horrendous, but it's still a vivid memory now. It still really is a vivid memory.
Yeah. As I say, we concentrate on detaching the emotions from those memories, and turning them into a narrative memory, basically. Right. As I say, especially when, you know, in terms of bullying, marginalization, that kind of thing. You touched on something then with schools and teachers, etc., a few minutes ago. And again, how times have changed. I can remember being at school back in those days. The teachers would suss out you were gay perhaps before you did, and would perhaps pick on you. Well, did pick on me. You could see the sort of their disdain, their disgust. I mean, you've got to remember, when I was at school in the 70s, it was only 10, 12 years since being gay had been decriminalized. So, you know, times were very different. I mean, I'm sounding like a real old fogey now, aren't I?
Well, what you've done there is you've taken us into, I said at the start of the show that you know, this is one of our special Menable matters for Pride Month for 2022, and that's also how we connected. I think was I made a comment or did a an article about what Menable are going to be doing to support that. And you mentioned there about being gay. So you came out when you were 15? Is that
I
right?
was 15, yes.
And I'll just reiterate that for anyone who's listening to the audio version, your background for the video version actually is, and you've done this especially for the car audience, you've created what looks like a bonnet badge, but with the rainbow flag in it.
Yeah. Got to join in the spirit of the thing.
Which I'm going to ask you if I can have. I'm going to nick it.
Absolutely.
And put Menable underneath because I think it's brilliant. So
absolutely, I'll send it you over later.
Sorry, you came out at 15.
At 15, yes, and I was brought up in was it a rough area?
What was that, Martin? If you don't mind me, I don't want to.
1979. I was born in 64.
Right. Okay. All right. So yeah. So as you say, not long into, the kind of legal acceptance, but I suppose culturally and societally, we were still a long way from acceptance, weren't we?
Yeah. Well, what I couldn't cope with at home, because I was at that age where, parents start, my dad would be saying to me, have you got a bird yet? That kind of thing. Just excuse me, someone's just bringing me a coffee. Lovely, thank you. Got to keep the throat wet. Thanks, Nick. Yeah, I was at that age, as I say, where you're expected to start going out with girls, this, that, and the other. Now, I, even at that age then, found it difficult to start leading an edited life. I didn't want to tell lies. I was struggling with self-acceptance. I can remember the summer of 1978. Grease was out at the cinema. I can remember going to see it maybe 20 times. And each time wishing I was straight like those people in there, but I knew I wasn't. So the following summer, 79, I told my parents because I just didn't want to lie to them. It's not in, I wasn't comfortable to start trying to create a different life or an imaginary girlfriend, or God forbid, even worse, go with a girlfriend, knowing full well I was gay, not bisexual. I knew exactly where my tendencies lay. But I can remember my dad dragging me around to the GPs, fix him.
Oh, really?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Wow. I was just going to ask, actually, what was your parents' reaction? But
my mother, she accepted, I would say, tolerated. Well, get back onto that subject in a minute if we may. But my dad was very, very anti. I was a big disappointment to him. And the irony of that was he worked in film and television all his life, was surrounded by gay people, didn't have an issue with them. But he was always frightened of me being some item of ridicule. And I can remember my mother saying to me, if that's how you are, that's how you are. But then she said to me, but you won't go on
acceptance, is it? That's
tolerance.
Yeah.
And I can remember her saying to me, oh, just tell me something. You won't go on one of these marches, will you, that I see on television? So, of course, I got the train down to London and went on a gay pride march. As you do.
And of course, the other thing there as well, Martin, is that, not long after that was the whole AIDS epidemic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Probably, you probably timed that right or not right, depending on your perspective, I suppose, because, I'm a couple of years behind you, and, my timing of that was, it just wasn't okay to talk about it. The AIDS epidemic was out, you got your curiosities and uncertainties. And the next thing was, wow, you can't even look at someone or touch them without fear of getting this awful,
absolutely
disease.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there were terrible times, there were dark times. I lost a few friends. Thankfully, things have changed now with medications, with treatments, with PrEP to prevent you getting it in the first place. And of course, with treatments that enable people to live a normal lifespan now. But yeah, they were very, very dark days indeed. I can remember being sort of 20, 21, going into Manchester, into gay bars, and you could walk out of there at night time and there'd be people in the street throwing stones at you, shouting AIDS, die, this, that, and the other. Terrible, terrible dark times.
Yeah.
Now, and of course, the press didn't help back in those days either.
Oh, no, absolutely not. No, absolutely not. And I mean, I lived in obviously I loved my mum and my dad to bits, really. I mean, we had our moments where we didn't get on, but I lived in what I now class as a sort of constant carry-on film. Very, very working class, very sort of 70s bawdy kind of humor and attitudes, very tabloid news. One particular tabloid newspaper that used to have naked women on the first page, if you know which one I'm talking about. And their sort of attitudes and beliefs were shaped by all of that.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I can still remember the jokes of the time. Somebody saying, "Oh, you know what gay stands for? Got AIDS yet?" That kind of thing. I mean,
yeah.
That kind of thing sticks with you. It stays with you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it does. You're right. You're absolutely right. Well, yeah, no, indeed. So do you, excuse me, do you now deal with a lot of clients who come to you that are struggling with accepting their sexuality?
Not so much people struggling with accepting their sexuality these days as in the younger generation, because times have very much changed. Yeah. It's more people 30 plus who are suffering with one kind of, mental health issue or another. And as I say, a common thing with everything they present with is those automatic negative thoughts, those, negatively introspecting about things that happened. That kind of thing. And a lot of it stems from the bullying, from the marginalization, from the feeling they were the only one at the time. Things were very, very different, as you'll appreciate.
Yeah. No, well, I mean, I remember back to, the situation for me, because it's now fairly publicized that, I was curious about sexuality from 14, 15. I think you said you listened to my podcast the other week. And I remember now the reason I never came out as such then was because my mum in particular, I either would have been beaten up or, like you, dragged to the doctors for some sort of fix, or actually worse than that, she'd have been so proud to have the only gay or bisexual son in the town of a fully working class town that she'd have spread it everywhere.
Yeah.
And that would have been worse.
Yeah, I found that in later life, sort of when I'd got into my 30s or this, that, and the other. By that time, my mum had accepted it fully. But then, of course, she suddenly thought she was an authority on the subject, and she'd be shouting it out.
It's funny.
Yeah, and my dad came round in the end as well, which was nice.
No, indeed. Now, obviously, I've mentioned that you've done this pride flag in a car kind of bonnet badge type emblem, and obviously, Menable Matters is aimed at an automotive audience, and for Pride Month, we want to be getting the message out there. Tell us what's your experience of this issue of acceptance around sexuality in particular in very masculine environments, because that's where the two things come together for me.
Okay, yeah, well, as you've said in some of your other podcasts, the kind of people that the industry attracts, it's perhaps often alpha males, this, that, and the other. I'm talking more perhaps on the sales side here. And then, of course, if you go to the recruitment process, are we hiring like kinds? Are we looking for people that are like kinds, or were we? Because as the saying goes, if you keep on doing what you've always done, you'll keep on getting what you've always got. So if when we're recruiting, we are looking for people like us, then we're just bringing more into the fold. And again, if you look at training, one thing and another, and again, I know you've got a bit of a background in NLP as well. If you look at modeling, if younger people are encouraged to ape their seniors within the trade, nothing's going to change. And again, the whole thing of a salesy background, it's all very team orientated, team spirited. And again, it's very easy for someone to feel not included. And I think, I mean, it's very cutthroat in a sales background when you have your monthly meetings and, you know, how things are going to be. That kind of atmosphere, that kind of macho atmosphere, very team, you know, very like the football team who was picked last for the team at school, that kind of thing. You know, we've got comparable scenarios there. And I think, as I say, it's to do with that thing of everything carrying on and becoming institutional, basically.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, that's the environment I've grown up in is very masculine environments, and you know, the use of banter previously was, you know, fairly well sort of accepted, and you know, if you were anything slightly outside of the norm, you know, it was quite often something that you would keep to yourself because, you know, for fear of how that was going to be treated. Now, interestingly, you mentioned there about this recruiting in your own likeness. One of the car industry's sort of leading thought leaders, a guy called Jim Saker, Professor Jim Saker, he uses this word to describe that, which is homophily. And I can't help thinking that there's an irony in that word begins with the word homo.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which I'm sure somebody who's far more adept at language will say, well, yeah, homo has male meaning, doesn't it? I think, if I don't know, top of my head, but
yeah, it's the male thing, isn't it? Homo sapien, homo whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I get lost in all these tags and titles these days. You've got certain parts of the community who don't like the word homosexual. Doesn't bother me in the least. And then, oh dear, I can go on about this one for hours. You can go on about, let's talk about flags and banners really being Pride Month. They're using white flags now for an all-inclusive thing, or they've changed the colours on the rainbow over recent years. I can remember, I'm really going back in time now, maybe 30 plus years ago in Manchester, a business I was involved in at the time, were trying to set up a gay business organisation in Manchester. And the first meeting, the first 2 hours of it was completely discussing whether it should be the Gay and Lesbian Business Association, the Lesbian and Gay Business Association, the Gay Business Association, the Pink Triangle Business Association, and on it went. And to this day, these things are still widely discussed. And I think more and more people are, rather than labeling themselves one thing, they're just coming under the, you know, identifying under the pride flag, under the rainbow flag.
Yeah. Do you know what, that leads me on to thinking that you know, we're talking a lot lately about diversity and equality and, you know, inclusivity and gender balance and, you know, sexuality acceptance and I just think the only time, for me, the only time that we'll ever get to a place where we have properly achieved that is when we stop bloody talking about it.
Absolutely.
You know what? We just accept people for who they are, that they don't need a badge or a flag or a label or a, you know, a title or a pronoun, or you know what I mean?
I mean, as I say, inclusivity means everyone. And I mean, let's talk about the recent self-outing of Jake Daniels, for example. Wouldn't it be nice if it wasn't news? Wouldn't it be nice if it wasn't an issue? But again, I'm sounding like a real old fogey on here. But going back to my day when I was 15 and I was really struggling to accept what I was, what positive role models did I have? I mean, I can remember kept getting called a puff at school and this, that, and the other. What did I have to look at on television? Larry Grayson, John Inman. You know, and it was like, well, I don't think I'm like that, but I know I'm gay. Whereas now, how many young men will suddenly not feel alone, not feel like the only one because of what Jake Daniels has done?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got to say, you know, I watched over I don't watch it because I'm not a football fan, but I saw some of the footage of, you know, various sort of football games and finals and this, that, and the other going on. And I just think, yeah, there's a lot of homophobia in that area. And so, okay, let's put 30,000 men all in the one place together, and they're all cuddling and holding each other, and walking down the street arm in arm. Sorry,
sounds fun.
Yeah. And I just thought, interesting, isn't it? There's an irony there, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. But again, football, the first footballer to come out, of course, was Justin Fashionow, and we all know what happened with him.
Yeah.
He was not supported from the game. He wasn't supported by his family, which tends to get overlooked these days. But then think back 25 maybe years. I may have got the timing wrong on that. But look at Watford FC, Elton John buying into it. And of course, the entire crowd would be cheering, "Don't bend down when Elton's around."
Wow.
It's things have changed. And as I say, I think with Jake Daniels, yes, it was incredibly brave. There's a lot of people out there saying, no, it wasn't brave. Yes, it was, because he's at the start of his career and he's took one hell of a gamble. A few people have come out at the end of their careers where they stand to lose very little, and that's fine. That's their setup. That's fine. I'm not judging, but they haven't done anything to help young aspiring people by doing it at that age.
Absolutely.
When they don't have very much to lose, whereas Jake Daniels he's really put himself up there, and I absolutely take my hat off to him. I absolutely do.
I found actually that I've now started saying that people say to me, "Oh, it's brave of you to share your story and to talking about this in the way that you do." And I go, "No, it's not. I don't think it's brave of me. I think it's brave of the people around me to accept and not judge, and just continue to support me on the basis of, well, you're still the same person."
Yeah, I would gently disagree with you there, Stephen. I think you're incredibly brave. I've listened to your podcasts, and that is real from the heart stuff. You really go deep into it there. Absolutely. When you talk about wanting to end it all and this, that, and the other, and very nearly did. I think you bared your soul, really bared your soul. I think whether it's people in your industry, or people from other backgrounds, someone somewhere along the line will benefit from what you've said there. Absolutely.
Thank you.
No, absolutely.
That's why I'm so grateful that you've come onto the podcast and we can talk openly about this stuff, because I think that there is another movement about driving sort of sexuality awareness and stuff, and pride through the automotive industry, and we're still, again, another area where a long way away from that. And thank you for being so kind and saying about my bravery, but that came really from me being at a point where, like you said, I'm towards the back end of my career. I've got nothing left to lose. I screwed up the life that I had. I've got people who now blame me for making their lives destroyed, and it's not quite how I view it, but
well, again,
I got to a point where it was left nothing left. Do you know what I mean?
Well, again, if I may, I would gently disagree with that, because I've seen the great strides you've already made with Menable, and you seem to have been welcomed back into the industry with open arms.
Well, do you know, that's funny you say that, because ironically, yeah, I mean, this is the point, is that for years, and this would be my message to anyone, equivalent to a Jake Daniels in the industry, is, don't do what I did and keep it to yourself for years. Accept who you are, be who you are, be open about it with people. Don't go into detail because it's not their business. But, just be open about who you are and what you think. And actually, you'll be surprised that people will be accepting. And as my now ex-wife says, that, she said, well, the only person that doesn't accept you is you. And she was spot on. She was absolutely right. And I've told her that before. And isn't that a shame to wait till you're in your 50s before you can be like that?
Yeah. It's strange how things are perceived as well, Steve, because as I say, I came out when I was 15 and I always felt I had, pretty much accepted myself. I got on with things. I created my own little bubble in which I lived. I've been with the same partner 26 years. And yet it's only when I started really self-examining after the incidents at the shop, after the robberies, and started really exploring hypnotherapy and psychotherapy, that I realized deep down I hadn't truly accepted myself. And I used to have a lot of weight issues. Excuse me. I used to have a lot of weight issues. I was 21 stone, whereas now I'm 12. And food was always my go-to thing. Even from being little, when I'd been beaten up at school once more or something, I'd cheer myself up with a bag of sweets, a bag of chips, whatever. And I think at various points through being an adult, I did the same thing. Yes, I'd jump on fad diets or this, that, and the other, but the default position, the one I always went back to, was overeating and using food as an emotional crutch. And I think when I started to do my studying, I really truly dealt with the self-acceptance, and the weight issues disappeared. Absolutely disappeared.
Yeah. Now you were telling me beforehand, actually, that your transition into becoming a hypnotherapist was as a result of a couple of fairly traumatic examples of where you were before. You were a jeweler, and
I was a spoke jeweler.
Yeah, and your shop got robbed or attempted robbery?
Twice. Once at the end of 2014, which was featured on Crime Watch in 2015, my claim to fame, and then again in 2016. And the one in 2016 was a particularly nasty incident, and it just totally turned me against wanting to have the shop anymore. The Saturday afternoon following what happened, I just put the key in the door, locked it, and I said to my other half, I'm not going back. And that was it. Obviously, we had to go back and sort things out, but I didn't open again, and I've never looked back. I've never looked back. I mean, I took a huge financial hit. We were in the process of buying the property, and it messed things up for a little while, but I've always been very self-driven, very self-motivated. I've worked for myself since I was 23. So I was able to dust myself down, and then I started to, as I say, look around. I was studying hypnotherapy, and I felt a lot better in myself, and it gave me a clear direction in which to go. But I would say, even for somebody who, to the sort of public perception, has always been really, really out and quite proud in this, that, and the other, in terms of self-acceptance, no, I would say probably only the last 6 years, truly self-acceptance. Up until that point, if somebody had said to me, if you could press a button and be straight, would you? I would probably have said yes most of the time. Whereas now, no, I'm quite happy. I look at myself and I think, you're okay.
Help me out there, Martin, because you said that before we started recording, and I get that, because I'm exactly the same. Where does that come from? That, if you, a few years ago, if you could have pressed a button and been straight,
again, is it the tribal instincts, wanting to conform, wanting to fit in, wanting greater acceptance from the majority? Or maybe it's just the easy opt-out, thinking, life would be easier if I was straight.
Wow.
But I've always known I'm not. I wouldn't go down that path because I wouldn't kid myself. I know truly, absolutely deep down what I am. I'm not bisexual. I'm gay. Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm going to throw something else in the mix now.
Go on.
And that is that I read a lot about this sort of stuff, of course, as part of the journey of acceptance. And I've come across some information, some articles that actually started with, you talk about tribes. There's a tribe, I guess you call them, of indigenous people in some of the Pacific Islands. And they actually have a third gender.
The Fafa females.
And these are children that are born male, but they show much more feminine traits as they get older. And actually what they do is they encourage this, because what they've naturally realized is that this is humanity's way of controlling the population.
That's I've seen a documentary a few years ago, and I'm sorry for interrupting you there with the Fafa females, but I remember seeing a documentary a few years ago, and I found that fascinating.
I know.
And again, that gets you onto a whole different discussion in terms of, is it a way of controlling the population? You get the thing, again, talking about mental health issues and gay men. You can find lots and lots of statistics out there about gay men and mental health issues. They suffer far more with them than the general population. As I say, there's lots of evidence out there. I can't quote any off the top of my head. The most recent one being the government LGBT survey in 2018, or was published in 2018. And again, another point for discussion, which is perhaps the opposite end of the acceptance there in the Pacific Islands. Most gay men I've spoken to will admit to having some kind of self-destruct button. And when they explore further, again, the common thing I seem to get back from them is, well, they serve no biological purpose, i.e. they're not going to reproduce.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're right. I feel a Martin Furber podcast part 2 coming on, where we talk about this a bit more, because it was only something I stumbled across, and I thought, wow, yeah. I mean, no one knows, do they? No one, but that could. And then someone else said to me, well, you do realize that even ducks are bisexual.
Yeah,
because apparently it may have been. Was that you that told
it was me? Yeah, you see a lot of gay ducks. A lot of gay ducks. Go down to the pond in mating season and you'll see a lot of pairs of males together.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah,
that's fascinating. Another friend of mine said that even dolphins have homosexual tendencies.
It's everywhere in the animal kingdom. I particularly notice it with ducks, because we have a duck pond down the road from us, and I go down there and feed them.
An observer of ducks, duck pride. That's brilliant. Well, I mean, anyone who of our age who remembers Flipper will know that there couldn't have been a more camp program than that. So it's that probably bears some resemblance, I guess.
I don't know. I think the campest program of all time, if you think about it, is Mr. Ben.
Well, yes.
He used to come out of his closet in a different outfit every week.
Yeah, absolutely. He was definitely under a very, very varied rainbow, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. And did you notice that every week it was always either an American Indian or an American motorcycle cop? Oh, hello. We nearly got the whole Village People there.
I was just going to say, I think the Village People took inspiration from that. And of course, anybody listening to this under 40 won't have a clue what we're talking about.
We just lost the audience completely if you're under.
Yeah. Look it up on YouTube. You'll love
it. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, brilliant. All right. So, Martin, any final hints or tips then on this whole area of acceptance? And thank you so much for your honesty and openness, and actually, encouraging me as well to be so relaxed. It's amazing how I've clearly been myself on this podcast. I've felt so relaxed. It's great.
Well, absolutely. I felt I owed it to you, at least, to open my soul up after I've heard your podcasts. It's the least I could do. Final thoughts. Yeah, just okay. It's not my quote, it's Michael Yapko. Anything you concentrate on, you will amplify. So if you're having a bad day, stop thinking about the bad thing that's happened. Mm-hmm. Try and think about something positive. When you talk about hypnotherapy, Stephen, people tend to think, oh, woo-woo, this, that, and the other. Anybody who knows me will know I'm probably the least sort of woo-woo kind of person you could ever wish to meet. Yeah. I'm very much a sort of evidence-based kind of person. Yes, I would describe myself as a critical thinker, but it works. And it works well. And as I say, it's quite simple. Anything you concentrate on, you will amplify. So try and direct your thoughts away from the bad thing that's troubling you onto something positive. Look forward, look ahead, concentrate on something that you're looking forward to. And, it will alter your mindset and snap you out of that mood, hopefully.
And how does that work with anxiety? I don't tend to suffer so much with anxiety. Mine's more sort of overthinking, which I suppose is
anxiety is caused by negative thinking,
right?
Negatively introspecting about the past, even
worrying about the future.
Yeah, thinking about something ahead that's happening. Yeah. Okay. Here's a little point for you, Stephen. Your mind cannot tell the difference between imagination and reality. Mm-hmm. Okay. If you want me to elaborate further on that, just picture this. You sat at home watching a horror film. The doors are locked, curtains are drawn. You know you're perfectly safe in your own home. And yet when that monster comes on the television, you'll still jump out of your bloody seat. Because your mind cannot tell the difference between imagination and reality. Yeah, now, okay, say you had a sales meeting next week to go to. Say you're still back in your old job, but you've got a sales meeting to go to. If you're on red alert, you'll start to think about it in the worst possible terms in every scenario. The meeting will go okay. They usually do, you know that, in your logical mind. But you've been on red alert with the primitive mind, you know, you hear it referred to as fight, flight, right? So in your mind, you've been to 51 meetings and 50 of them have been a complete disaster. And that adds to what we refer to as the metaphorical stress bucket. You know, we all have that in our heads and we can keep adding to it, adding to it, adding to it. And eventually it'll overflow. And again, we're talking in metaphors, but getting back to sort of early years, bullying, marginalization, that kind of thing, it's usually there at the bottom of the bucket. You need to clear that out and move ahead.
Yeah, and we see or hear a lot of comments at times from people who are that anxious that they'll say things like, oh, well, it's all right for you, you know, because they're comparing their life with your life. Because obviously, I suppose it's easier for them to see what's going on for you with a much clearer lens than what's going on for them if they're overwhelmed.
It is, and we all have a different map of the world, as you'll know. So, you know, it is impossible to see the world through somebody else's eyes. It's great to be able to empathize, though. And again, listen, understand.
Martin, that has been absolutely brilliant. I'm so delighted that you agreed to come onto the podcast.
No, thank you for inviting me on. I've been looking forward to it, no end.
I think we definitely will have a Martin Furber part 2.
Absolutely. Whenever you like. It'd be my pleasure.
A hypnotherapy session coming on as well.
That could be arranged.
And so I'll tell you what, if anyone wants to get hold of you, if they've sort of anything you've said has resonated and they want to have a chat with you, what's the best way to reach you?
My website is martinfurber.com. That's spelled Furber. They can reach me by phone, 01772 200 774, or they can reach out to me on LinkedIn. It's LinkedIn/Martin-Furber.
Do you know what? I thought you were going to go into that Aletta Adams song then all of a sudden when they can reach me by.
No, you don't want me singing, believe me.
That's going to be an earworm now, and it'll be in your ear all day. You won't be able to do it. All right, Martin Furber, thank you so much for joining me on Menable Matters. Thoroughly enjoyed that. And we definitely will do a part 2. But for now, thank you very much indeed. We'll see you soon.
Thank you, Stephen. It's been a pleasure.
Take care. All the best.